4 spine-chilling Uber horror stories. Discover the sinister truths behind 100 haunted rides. Jenna's heart raced as she pulled up to the corner of a dimly lit street. The city buzzed, people laughing and chanting not far away. But there was something off, a chill creeping in beneath the thrum of Denver's nightlife. She glided her Uber through familiar streets, her little car a capsule of normalcy amid the chaos. Then, a ride that changed everything. Marcus slid into the back seat, his eyes wide, darting out the window like a hunted animal. "They're watching us," he whispered, voice trembling. Jenna rolled her eyes, thinking it was just nerves, until she caught a glimpse in her rearview mirror. 2 dark SUVs trailing close. No way, she thought. The city was usually a safe place. But Marcus's anxiety seeped into her, feeding her own fears. The vehicles loomed ominously, following them through winding suburban backroads, shadows stretching like sinister fingers. It felt as if night had teeth, ready to bite. The air thickened with tension as she tried to shake it off. But once Marcus abruptly asked to be let out, running with a wild look in his eyes, she didn't feel so certain anymore. Weeks passed, each ride blending into the last. Yet, every passenger whispered nervously about being followed. Their fear wrapped around her heart, squeezing tighter each night. Jenna parked, unease creeping in like a persistent shadow. She glanced out her window, expecting to see cars lurking behind her. The sense of being observed clung to her like a second skin. When strange noises echoed through her home, Ryan's innocent laughter began to mix with gasps of confusion and echoes of dread. "Mom, what was that?" he asked, eyes magnified with fright. It hit its peak when Jenna discovered Marcus's name on a missing persons list, but police shrugged her off. "Just another sad story," they said. The city's pulse drummed in her ears, the indifference of the authorities amplifying her frustration. She couldn't shake the feeling deep in her gut, like ice trailing along her spine. Panic morphed into determination. If something was wrong, she'd have to uncover it herself, protect Ryan at all costs. Thus began her descent into a world drenched in shadows. She dug up urban legends, stumbling across whispers of the driver's wraith, a sinister specter that preyed upon drivers, snatching families from their lives. The thought sent chills up her arms. Delving deeper into this mystery only seemed to reveal more nightmares. Each ride felt like standing on a tightrope, surrounded by darkness waiting patiently to allure the unwary. Driving through eerie, empty neighborhoods, her familiar city turned into a labyrinth of dread. And then one night, the engine sputtered, dying on an isolated stretch of road. Panic tightened around her throat as shadows danced, and she suddenly felt far from home. The air grew thick, suffocating. Then she saw a figure emerging from the darkness, familiar yet twisted. Chills surged through her veins, the world closing in, and the realization struck her like a lightning bolt. If she didn't act fast, Ryan might already be lost in that swirling abyss. Jenna's breath caught in her throat as the figure stepped closer, illuminated by the ghostly glow of her headlights. It looked like someone she knew, but something was deeply wrong. The features twisted, almost caricatured, eyes hollow and dark like the endless night pressing in from all directions. "Mom." The voice was a rasp, a mockery that sent frost racing down her spine. "Ryan," she screamed, slamming the door lock shut, the metallic click barely loud enough to drown out her pounding heart. Panic surged through her veins, sharp and urgent. She fumbled for her phone, hands slick with sweat. The vehicle was her only fortress, but out there just beyond the glass lay a world where nightmares waited with bated breath. Desperation sank into her bones. "I have to get to Ryan," she whispered to herself, though the words felt flimsy against the weight of her dread. With trembling hands, Jenna turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed and sputtered, refusing to come alive. Shadows flitted just outside her window, like whispers at the back of her mind. The figure lingered, arms reaching toward her, and Jenna's instincts screamed to run, to escape. But where? There was nowhere to go. The GPS flickered breathlessly on the screen, an unsettling reminder of how isolated she truly was. Her heart raced harder as her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. An unknown number blinked ominously. She grabbed it, praying for a sign of safety. "Jenna, they're coming for you," hissed a voice on the other end, twisted with urgency. Jenna's chest tightened. Who? Who is this? Marcus. The line crackled, cutting out suddenly, leaving Jenna staring at her phone in shock. The figure stepped closer, face now shadowed but unmistakably familiar. Ryan's face twisted in terror. Don't let them take you, fueled by adrenaline. Jenna slammed her foot down on the gas. The tires squealed, but the car lurched forward, barely breaking free of the clutches of its early grave. She swerved the wheel, the trees whipping past like gnarled hands grasping for her. However, in the rear view, the dark SUVs had reappeared, their lights glowing like malevolent eyes in the dark. They're everywhere, Marcus had warned. She was not just being hunted, she was part of a sick game, and Ryan was the prize. Jenna pushed through the surge of panic, gripping the wheel tighter, desperation morphing into blinding resolve. She had to protect him. She had to find him before it was too late. But where was he? The streets sped by, and the fuel gauge dipped perilously low, her escape turning more precarious with every passing second. Then, suddenly, a sharp pain pierced her side, a burning sting, a reminder she wasn't alone. Jenna gasped, nausea swirling as she glanced down. A figure stood right outside her window, its breath fogging the glass, fingers tapping softly, rhythmically, as if counting down. The sound invaded Jenna's mind, dizzying her as she slammed her foot on the gas. But it felt futile, a shadowy presence calling her toward an inevitable doom. Mom! The scream echoed hauntingly, and her heart wrenched as another face loomed closer. Ryan's innocent visage twisted in horror. Help me. She couldn't lose him. Not now. Fuel drained, nightmare closing in, Jenna knew something had to break. She spun the wheel, veering sharply onto a side road not marked on the GPS. Trees closed in, their branches clawing at her car like grasping fingers. Then, a glimmer of hope. A light up ahead. Was it an exit? Was it safety? Or was it a trap, another layer of darkness disguised as salvation? The shadow of doubt crept back, and just as she steeled herself for the truth, the lights flickered violently and everything went black. When darkness consumed her, Jenna felt a malevolent force wrapping around her heart. Was Ryan safe? Could she even trust her own mind? As sounds echoed in the void, just before losing consciousness, a sly whisper curled through the silence. You're already too late. What awaited her when she opened her eyes again? Jenna's eyes fluttered open, the world slowly materializing through a mist of confusion. The first thing she noticed was the smell, musty, damp, like a cellar long abandoned. She sat up with a jolt, heart pounding as she took in her surroundings. Brick walls surrounded her, slick with moisture, and the faint light filtering in from a cracked window was pale and sickly. A shiver ran down her spine. This wasn't the roadside where she thought she might find help. It felt like a tomb. Where was Ryan? The thought hit her like a blow. Ryan, she called out, voice hoarse, desperation ringing through each syllable. Silence answered her, thick as the shadows pooling in the corners of the room. Jenna scrambled to her feet, the cold stone floor sending chills up her legs. She steadied herself against the wall and tried to push through the fog of disorientation, her thoughts swirling. Images of the figure, the vacant eyes, the twisted expressions flooded her mind. She thought of her son and pushed the panic deep down. She needed a plan. The adrenaline began to spike again, forcing her to scan the dimly lit room for any clues, any way out. A door stood ajar at the other side, a sliver of darkness beckoning her like a void. Jenna approached cautiously, her footsteps silent as she edged closer, holding her breath. The air felt heavy, oppressive, stifling her hopes that she might actually escape. What could be waiting for her on the other side? The memory of the phone call with Marcus shot through her mind. They were coming for her. But who were they, and what did they want? She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, focusing. Collecting her strength, she wrapped her fingers around the door handle. The metal felt cold and unfamiliar in her palm, a stark reminder of her vulnerability. Taking a deep breath, Jenna turned it slowly, every creak sending a jolt through her. The door swung open, revealing a narrow hallway that stretched before her like a tunnel leading into darkness. As she stepped out, a chill swept through, tangible and biting. The silence was unnerving, so she whispered Ryan's name again, hoping the sound might somehow reach him, wherever he was. As she ventured deeper into the corridor, the air grew thick with an almost palpable malevolence. Shadows flitted at the edges of her vision, always out of reach, just beyond the light. With every step, Jenna's heart raced faster, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. And then she heard a distant sound that sent spikes of dread up her spine. Laughter. It danced through the air, light and haunting, echoing off the walls in twisted harmony. It wasn't just any laughter. It was the kind that signified a nightmare just waiting to unfold. Mom, another voice came, softer, more fragile. Ryan. The sound propelled Jenna forward, calling her to action. Without thinking, she sprinted down the corridor, her feet pounding against the cold stone, the laughter growing louder, now almost mocking. She reached the end, an archway leading into a dimly lit room. But the laughter stopped suddenly, and the silence that followed felt heavy, oppressive. Jenna hesitated. What lay ahead? Was it Ryan? Or the monsters that lurked? With resolve building in her chest, Jenna stepped through the arch. The sight made her blood run cold. A table lay at the center, covered with a dark cloth. Shadows danced over it, hiding whatever dread lay beneath. And then she heard breathing. Heavy, ragged, coming from behind the table. Mom, help! Ryan's voice trembled, the despair ripping through her heart. Ryan. Jenna lunged forward, but the laughter erupted again, echoing in her skull, drowning him out. She was running out of time. With every ounce of power, she grabbed the cloth covering the table and ripped it away. What was waiting for her beneath? The cloth fell away, revealing a grotesque sight. Jenna's heart plummeted. It wasn't Ryan lying there. Instead, an array of tattered dolls stared up at her, their eyes glinting in the dim light, each face twisted into a grimace. It was as if they were all mocking her, caught in a frozen scream of terror, their mouths stitched shut as if silencing their cries. Mom. The voice was closer now, desperate and hollow. Dread pooled in Jenna's stomach as she searched for the source. Above the dolls, the shadows shifted, and she felt the prickling sensation of being watched. Ryan. Panic gripped her as she took a step back. Where are you? The air grew heavier, thick with dread, as if saying that name had summoned something more sinister. The laughter, once a haunting echo, now morphed into whispers that wrapped around her like tendrils of fog, soft, taunting, coaxing. Come play with us. Jenna, the whispers swirled, wrapping her thoughts in a haze. We've been waiting. Jenna's mind raced. She had to find Ryan. He was out there, somewhere, needing her. She stepped away from the table, shaking her head as if to clear it, forcing her trembling legs to move. But something yanked at her, dragging her back. The dolls. The way they stared, as if they knew her deepest fears, was unbearable. Mom. The voice was a whisper now, close and trembling. Desperation fueled her forward, overwhelming the fear that clawed at her heels. She turned from the dolls, the shadow-cloaked corner of the room now pulling her in. There was another door. It was a silhouette pressing against the wall, hidden within the gloom. As she approached, the feeling intensified. The whispers grew more frantic, drowning her senses. Stay with us, you don't need to leave. Jenna pushed the door open. It creaked like bones snapping. The room was dark, save for a flickering light bulb above, casting a sickly pale glow. The floor was littered with scattered toys, broken chairs, and blood. Her breath hitched as she drew in the coppery smell. Mom. Please. Ryan's voice wobbled in the shadows, the sound like shattered glass. Jenna stumbled, barely catching herself as she lunged in the direction of the voice. Ryan. Her heart pounded against her ribcage like a mad drum. But what lay ahead was not her son. Instead, it was a mirror. The glass cracked, splintering the reflection into a myriad of faces, all twisting in agony. Confronted by herself, aged and with wild eyes, mouth stretched in an eternal scream, Jenna felt something shift in her mind. Faces of the doll children, the laughter, even the whispers came together, blending into a single note of madness. Jenna, the voice was soft now, eerily familiar. Join us. Her skin prickled as a chill snaked down her spine. In that instant, everything shifted. The edges of her reality began to blur, the walls pulsating as if they were alive. She staggered back from the mirror, the whispers gaining intensity. A flick of movement caught her eye, a figure in the shadows, wispy and shrouded, almost like smoke. It slithered toward her, reaching out with fingers that beckoned. In terror, Jenna turned to run. Stay away from me. But something grabbed her wrist, yanking her back. As it pulled, reality twisted. The scream of the cracked mirror echoed around her, urging everything to swallow her whole, to trap her inside the labyrinth of shadows. Jenna screamed, the world receding as she was yanked closer to the darkness. Help! A fractured cry, and then silence fell, heavy and total. Nothing remained but a suffocating stillness, broken only by a single whisper. Now we're together. Where was Ryan? And what had she become? Jenna's heart raced in the darkness. The silence pressed heavily against her ears, swelling with an overwhelming absence of sound. She blinked, trying to adjust her eyes, but the shadows seemed to pulse, an inky void threatening to swallow her whole. Ryan? She called, her voice cracking. Fear gripped her throat, tightening like a noose. The shadows shifted, revealing nothing but the soft glimmer of moonlight trying to penetrate the gloom. Panic bubbled within her as the weight of despair cocooned her. A sudden scuttling noise on the floor made her freeze. Something was moving. She squinted, her breath hitching. The flickering bulb above stuttered, sending sporadic bursts of light that illuminated the chaotic mess surrounding her. Amidst broken chairs and discarded toys, a doll lay on its side, its patches of cloth frayed. It had to be a trick of the light, but Jenna swore it was watching her. The figure in the shadows was insistent now, an unearthly presence invading her mind. Join us, the whisper slithered through the air, coiling around her thoughts. A wave of nausea hit her as the world spiraled. She staggered back, tumbling into a corner, desperate to escape the specter of her own terror. But just as she thought she was free, the shadow coalesced, revealing a figure doll-like, but distinctly human. It was just a glimpse, a fleeting vision of horror. Then the light dimmed, and the shadows engulfed her again. Help! Her scream echoed emptily, swallowed by the darkness. Help! The echo came back, but it sounded wrong. Distorted, twisted. The chilling realization hit her. It was not just her own voice, but her tormentors, the doll's collective cry. They had come alive, animating her deepest fears, propelling her into psychological chaos. Terror rippled through her veins as she scrambled away from the echoing cries. A door. She could see it through the darkness, the faint outline begging for her to escape. She ran, heart pounding, but the shadows thickened around her, clawing at her sanity with every step. Stay with us, they chanted, their voices blending into a chorus that clawed at her mind. The very walls seemed to bend inwards, as if the house itself conspired to keep her trapped. She could almost feel their presence creeping closer, brushing against her skin, chilling her to the bone. Jenna burst through the door, but stumbled into a room that felt familiar yet alien. The walls were lined with more mirrors, all cracked and spiderwebbed, reflecting a nightmarish version of her reality. She was trapped in a house of distorted reflections, monsters hiding in the glass. Suddenly, Ryan appeared in the corner of her eye, a fleeting image that sent a bolt of hope through her heart. Mom. But the moment she turned to look, he was gone, replaced by the same mocking doll faces, their stitched mouths grinning maliciously back at her. Help me. She cried again, more desperate, more frantic. Would no one come? The room began to spin, dizzying her. As chaos swirled around her, she felt a tug on her heart. It was Ryan's voice again, faint but real. Jenna, don't give in. But how could she not? Every toy, every doll encircled her, drawing closer, whispering their sweet nothings. Could she resist? As Jenna teetered on the edge of surrender, the flickering light above exploded, showering her with glass shards and leaving her in a darkness so profound it pressed against her skin like an overwhelming weight. What would it take to find Ryan? What sacrifice would she need to make to escape? The darkness pulsated, an ancient malevolence awakening, breathless and hungry. In the suffocating dark, Jenna's thoughts coalesced into a single, paralyzing question. What if the person she needed to save the most was herself? In the stillness, a new whisper slithered through the silence. The game has just begun. What horror awaited her next? Jenna's lungs burned as she fought to suck in air. The darkness gradually twisted around her, a snaking entity that pressed against her skin like a cold embrace, suffocating in its intensity. Each heartbeat thudded in her ears, a desperate rhythm urging her to act. Mom. That voice again. Jenna. In the suffocating blackness, she clung to it like a lifeline. Ryan was nearby. She just needed to find him. She stumbled forward, hands reaching out to navigate the broken remnants of memories scattered across the floor. The glass shards from the broken bulb glinted ominously, reminders of her last moment of hope shattering into despair. "Join us," the doll's collective whisper echoed through the gloom, losing the rhythm of a song and morphing into a cacophony of hisses and cackles. They were toying with her, circling like vultures, relishing in her fear. A flicker of light sliced through the pitch, illuminating a pair of eyes in one of the mirrors. They were not just dolls, these were reflections of something far deeper, twisted remnants of her past tucked away in the corners of her mind. As Jenna edged closer, she could see the image shifting, forming a montage of lost moments: Ryan laughing in a park, his tiny hand reaching for hers. The image was so clear. Yet, as she touched the cold mirror, the reflection warped, morphing into a grotesque version of herself, a figure gaunt and hollow-eyed. "Help me." The words lodged in her throat like a thorn. Desperation surged through her. She crashed backward, falling against the floor as the laughter of the dolls echoed, mocking her. "You wanted to find him. You just need to join us." Fingers combed through her hair as she pressed her back against the wall. There was no escape. Every shadow, every twisted form was alive with malice. But then Jenna remembered. The stories. The parents who entered the realm behind mirrors and never returned. "Things are not what they appear." The voice was older now, more commanding. A shiver dashed through her, igniting something deep within her core. "Stand strong, Jenna." Ryan's voice cut through the haze. "I'm coming," she screamed, filled with sudden resolve. She leaped up, darting across the room, fueled by determination rather than fear. She just needed to find the way, to find him, to push back against the tide threatening to drown her. As she reached a door, its wood splintery, long abandoned, she hesitated. The moment weighed heavily, darkness pulsing behind her, enticing her back into the abyss. But with every ounce of willpower left, she grasped the handle, twisted it hard, and shoved it open. The sight beyond sent shockwaves through her heart. It was a hallway lined with more dolls, each one appearing more lifelike than the last, eyes glinting with a sinister intelligence. They were dancing, albeit slowly, to a beat only they could hear. "Join us," they sang beautifully. It was seductive, wrapping around her consciousness like a silken thread. She froze. Could surrender truly be safer than finding Ryan? The memory of his face flickered before her, promising safety, yet taunting her with every step further away. "Mom." His voice faded to a whisper, barely audible over the children's song echoing through the hollow space, beckoning her closer. With a sudden clarity, Jenna yelled, "No. I'm not one of you." The doll stilled. Silence replaced the sinister melody, and for a moment, the world felt suspended, as if the house itself was holding its breath. But behind her, a sound of creaking floorboard, heavier, closer. The shadows began to shift again, and she could feel the darkness breathing down her neck, hungry for her spirit. "Run." The time for hesitation had passed. Jenna bolted past the dolls as they ignited with fury, the chorus of shrill cries collapsing into a chaotic symphony. But there was a doorway at the end so close. Sunlight spilled faintly from underneath, promising the warmth of safety. Jenna lunged toward it, desperation fueling her sprint, yet the shadowy whispers clawed at her heels. "You will never escape." Just as she reached the door, it swung open, revealing not safety, but a yawning chasm lined with more mirrors and shadows. What awaited her on the other side? Could she truly outrun the darkness? And as she stepped over the threshold, one haunting question remained. What price would she have to pay to save her son? The moment Jenna crossed the threshold, a sickening dizziness engulfed her. The ground beneath felt unsteady, as if the very foundation were alive and unwelcoming. Shadows twisted and curled, mocking her resolve. But she pressed on, driven by the sinister echo of Ryan's voice in her mind. "Mom." It surged through her, igniting a desperate fire. She could not pivot back. She had to find him. Yet, in this altered realm, reality bent like a funhouse mirror. The corridor shifted into a twisted funhouse, walls bouncing reflections of Jenna in a seemingly endless loop, each image grinning like the doll she had escaped. "Join us," they teased, their voices layered and overlapping, filling her ears with a haunting melody. It felt like walking in a dream filled with nightmares. Jenna stumbled through the maze, heart racing, breath coming in shallow bursts. Ahead, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Was it Ryan? She rushed towards it, but as she neared, the figure melted away, a cruel illusion spawned from her own longing. "Stop!" she shouted, frustration spilling over into terror. The mocking laughter swelled around her, a tide of sound that threatened to consume her whole. "Stop playing games." The dolls began to reappear, not just watching but twitching, their heads bobbing in anticipation. Jenna felt the walls closing in, her pulse a violent drum in her ears. "If you're here," she yelled, "then show me where he is." Suddenly, the laughter ceased. For a breathless moment, solitude blanketed the air. A chill slipped beneath her skin as tension thickened, suffocating any remaining shred of hope. Jenna's stomach twisted. She was the prey, and darkness surrounded her like a predator waiting to strike. "Help me," a soft voice floated to her. It was so faint, it might have been a whisper carried by the wind, yet it tugged at her heartstrings. It was Ryan. He was close, she could feel it. "Ryan," she called, her voice echoing into the void. The second her name hissed from her lips, shadows flared around her, forming shapes, figures pulling from the darkness. They weren't dolls anymore. They were people, flesh made of shadows, eyes hollow yet brimming with hungry malice. "Join us," they chanted like a warped choir, arms reaching toward her with desperate intent. Jenna stumbled back, feeling the walls closing tighter around her, breath trapped in her throat. They were no longer playful. Their voices morphed into a singular, guttural growl. "You will be ours." Just as they lunged, something shifted in the air. A fragment of light broke through the oppressive gloom. Like a moth to a flame, Jenna darted towards it. She shoved through the figures, felt cold fingers grabbing at her, clutching fabric and skin, but she wouldn't stop. Her heart screamed for Ryan, a promise to guide her home. She stumbled into a larger room, an ancient nursery filled with vintage toys and soft, pastel walls. But the innocence felt twisted, the objects alive with sinister energy. A cradle swayed gently in the center, its rhythmic creaking is accompanied by an unearthly lullaby. Straining against the noise, Jenna stepped closer, her heart pounding. Was Ryan there? The cradle rocked slowly, but there was no baby inside, just deep emptiness that shivered. "Run away or join us," the dolls were in pursuit, their cries swelling like dark emotions, pushing Jenna back toward her doom. She glanced around desperately. A wall lined with mirrors shimmered, whispering promises of safety, yet flickering with visions of the past. Could she turn them into allies? Or would they ensnare her like all the others? As dread pooled within her like a heavy fog, the cold fingers of despair clawed at her heart. What awaited her beyond this moment? Was the darkness too tight a fit for escape, or would she emerge with Ryan in hand? With the weight of haunting questions in her mind, Jenna faced the mirrors once more, braced for whatever might reflect back. What if this time, she had to confront not just shadows but her own hidden fears? What price would she pay to reclaim her son? Jenna hesitated, staring into the mirrors that lined the nursery walls. Each reflection showed not only her ghostly image but flickering snapshots of moments she'd rather forget. Ryan laughing, her eyes crinkling with joy, the accident that stole him away. Her heart raced faster, caught between these fragments of the past and her desperate present. "Face us," one shadow hissed, its form distorting her own image. "You can't hide from what you've done." Horror lanced through her. What had she done? The weight of guilt settled like lead in her stomach. She stepped back, her breath hitching. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You're not real. You can't be." The mirror images rippled. A reflection of Ryan blinked back at her with eyes wide in fear. "Mom," he called, but it wasn't his voice. It warped into a high-pitched laugh that echoed in the hollow room, a scream that was both chilling and irresistible. Jenna felt herself being pulled closer, her body betraying her with a desire to touch the glimmer of hope in the glass. "Help me," the sound came again, softer this time, threaded with desperation. "Mom." Before she knew it, she was racing toward the mirror, driven by that single voice. As she reached for it, a cold hand gripped her wrist, yanking her back. She spun around, heart pounding even harder in her chest. The dolls stood behind her, their eyes now glowing faintly, pure malice radiating. "Join us forever," they crooned. Their thin smiles widened, faces twisting in indescribable ways as if they were hungry. Jenna jerked away, pulling free from their grasp, but knowing they would pursue. She had to act. If she didn't confront this darkness, they would consume not just her, but Ryan as well. "Get away from me," she screamed, chaos spilling from her like a tsunami. But they advanced, relentless and unyielding. The lullaby from the cradle grew louder, a heartbeat vibrating through her bones. Oh God, the cradle! What if Ryan was trapped in there? What if he needed her? In a sudden panic, she dashed toward the haunting sound, determined to face whatever lay in wait. As she reached it, the lullaby grew sinister, a melody twisted by malice. The cradle rocked faster, thrumming with an energy that felt alive, almost sentient. Jenna peered inside, heart pounding. It was empty, but the shadows shifted, and whispers filled the air, her own dark fears unfurling. "You left him," an echo taunted. "You can't save what's gone." She could feel the demons inside her clawing to the surface, wrestling against her resolve. But she pushed back, summoning the love she felt for Ryan. "I won't let you take him. I'll fight you." The shadows froze for an instant, a glimmer of doubt crossed their features. Seizing the moment, Jenna turned and ran towards the mirrors, the laughter now shrill and frantic. "Show me the way," she cried. Yet the mirrors rippled with darkness, leaving her with silhouettes of countless mothers calling for their children, all swallowed by despair. Jenna's heart ached, the weight of their pain pressing down like chains. Suddenly, a shattering sound invaded the suffocating silence. One mirror cracked, spiderwebs of darkness spreading across its surface. A face emerged, Ryan's eyes, wide and pleading. He reached out toward her, fingers trembling. "Mom, help." Time froze. Jenna's breath caught. Fear gripped her veins, but hope ignited a fire in her chest. If she could just break through, she could save him. But before she could connect, the shadowed figures surged forward, blocking her view as the nursery collapsed in a wave of distorted screams. Jenna screamed against the tide, knowing she was on the brink of losing him forever. Would she be consumed, or could the light of her love pierce through the heavy darkness? What lay beyond that shattering mirror? Was it salvation or oblivion? With panic coursing through her, she lunged forward, desperate to shatter the barrier between them. Would she find Ryan, or was she about to plunge into an even deeper nightmare? Jenna lunged forward, the glass glimmering like broken stars, each shard a potential portal to her son. As her fingertips brushed against the cool surface, the world around her shifted. The air thickened, pulsing with the weight of desperation and dark laughter. Suddenly, she was tumbling through the mirror, a rush of cold engulfing her. Light fractured in a chaotic array, and she landed on a hard surface, her breath strangled by dread. The nursery, now a twisted version of itself, loomed around her. It was cloaked in shadow, walls pulsating as if the very structure was alive, hungry. "Ryan," she shouted, her voice swallowed by the oppressive darkness. The dolls were gone, but in their absence, an eerie silence took hold. The lullaby had faded, replaced by an unsettling stillness that made her skin crawl. She stood up, scanning the distorted room. The familiar toys sat strewn about, but they looked grotesque, their features warped and unsettling. A soft giggle echoed, sending chills racing up her spine. "Mommy," the voice chimed, but it was no longer just Ryan's. It was mocking, playful, steeped in malice. Rushing to the cradle, Jenna peered into its depths. There was Ryan, tiny and trembling, but his eyes were hollow, devoid of warmth, just empty voids filled with darkness. "Help me," he whispered, reaching out as shadows danced menacingly around him. "You have to save me now," she screamed, recoiling. This wasn't real, it couldn't be. But deep down, she understood that it was. Every nightmare she had buried deep inside her was clawing its way out. "This isn't you. This isn't my Ryan." With trembling fists, she kicked the cradle, desperate for the truth beneath the nightmare. Rigid silence followed, a taut string about to snap. The floorboards creaked ominously beneath her feet, and she sensed them, the shadows, lurking, waiting to consume her. "Join us," they murmured, voices weaving through the air like poison. "You cannot fight who you really are." "Shut up. Get away from me," Jenna gasped, backing away before spinning to run. She wasn't lost in her own mind anymore. She was ensnared in the shadows' realm, caught in a twisted echo of reality. The very walls whispered her guilt, her failures, feeding into the darkness. Suddenly, a weighty figure emerged from the shadows, a familiar silhouette that twisted her insides like a vice. It was Ryan, taller, eyes sunken, and a grin that shouldn't belong to a child. "Why did you leave me, Mommy?" he asked, his voice laced with the edge of betrayal. "You were supposed to take care of me, stop," she cried, each word a battle against the suffocating despair. "I didn't mean to, I tried. You know I loved you." The laughter crescendoed around her, weaving itself into a haunting melody that burrowed under her skin. Jenna felt the ground shake as more figures materialized from the darkness. Mothers and their lost children trapped in this web of despair. They reached for her, mouths agape, spirits shackled by regret. "Help us, save us," they chorused, a multitude of broken voices that echoed her guilt. Jenna shook her head, her heart pounding like a war drum. I can't save you." The shadows snaked around her feet, pulling her toward the center of this growing nightmare. She was losing herself, surrendering to the grief and anger that twisted her reality. And just as she felt the cold grasp of despair tighten, a flicker emerged. A faint glimmer of light caught her eye, pulsing like a heartbeat amidst the darkness. It was from another surface, a slanted mirror, cracked but alive. Jenna, the whisper was soft, familiar, yet echoing with urgency. "You must fight. Fight this darkness." With renewed determination surging within her, she made a choice. If she was going to confront the shadows, she would do it completely. Jenna began to push against the whirling chaos, focusing on that taste of light, the promise of hope. But would it be enough to cut through the thick veil of sorrow? Or had she ventured too deep into her heart's shadows? Before she could question further, the ground beneath her split open, pulling her towards an abyss of darkness. The chilling laughter erupted into a deafening roar. What lay beneath that darkness? A path to freedom or a deeper prison? As Jenna felt herself plummet into the abyss, panic clutched at her throat. The laughter echoed off the walls, a maddening cacophony of heartbreak. She could sense the shadows shifting around her, taunting her with memories and fears, but there was a flicker of light that pierced through the darkness, calling out to her deepest instincts, a tether to her son. "Ryan," she shouted, desperation sharpening the clarity in her mind. "I want to let go. I will fight for you." The determination surged through her chest, igniting a fire that had long been buried under layers of grief and fear. Suddenly, she opened her eyes again and found herself standing not in the suffocating void but in the nursery, now dimly lit as if dawn were breaking. The shadows lay still, waiting, anxious. "Where are you?" she called, her voice steadier now. She had to center herself in the reality of her love for Ryan. Then she spotted him. Not a twisted reflection or a sorceress figure, but her son, small, vulnerable, standing in the corner with tears streaming down his cheeks. "Mommy." His voice was a lifeline, cutting through the fog of despair with raw clarity. "Ryan." In an instant, she surged forward, but the dolls that had previously danced and mocked her stirred again. They flanked her path, their eyes alive with malice, whispering their dark promises. "Join us," they crooned, their voices wrapping around her like chains. "No," Jenna shouted defiantly. "I am not afraid of you." She reached deep within herself, drawing strength from every love-filled memory of Ryan, from every moment they had shared. "I am his mother." With fierce determination, she crashed through the cold, lifeless figures, feeling their resistance, but no longer cursed by the shadow's weight. The dolls shrieked, their laughter faltering as if threatened by the fierce flame of her resolve. "Ryan." She reached for him, and as they locked eyes, the entire room seemed to tremble. The shadows flickered, the darkness writhed, but Jenna's heart was steady. "Mom," Ryan cried, extending his arms in trust. "Help me get out. I'm coming," she exclaimed, pushing past the last of the dolls, their hands grasping, tugging at her like fading echoes. In a breathless rush, they reached each other. As she enveloped him in a warm embrace, Jenna felt an electric sensation, light bursting forth as if igniting from within them. The darkness began to crumble, the walls shaking and distorting, shadows screeching in protest. "Together, Ryan," she urged, holding him tight. "We can break free." With a loud roar that sent shivers down her spine, Jenna squeezed her eyes shut and held on to her son with everything she had. She recalled their laughter, bedtime stories, and the way his eyes would light up when he saw her. Suddenly, a blinding light exploded around them, and the figures of the dolls reduced to dust, scattering into the ether. The nursery dissolved, transforming back into reality a familiar sight, a street, dimly lit but safe. Jenna opened her eyes, breathless, as she found herself back in her car. The engine hummed softly. The looming dread of being hunted had evaporated. She looked over to see Ryan sprawled in the back seat, blissfully unaware of the terror they had just escaped. "Ryan," she breathed, sliding into the back and pulling him close. "You're safe." "Mom, what happened?" He mumbled, groggy but unharmed. "It's over," she whispered into his hair, relief flooding her heart. "We're free." Jenna glanced into the rearview mirror, where the dark SUVs had vanished under the first rays of dawn. The city was waking up, splashes of color and life returning, just like her own. She had fought the darkness, an internal battle of fears, guilt, and loss, but through it all, love had prevailed. And now, with her son safely beside her, a weight lifted from her heart. Jenna took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. They would walk forward together, ready to embrace whatever came next. Together, they were stronger, illuminated by the sacred bond that could withstand even the darkest of nights. "Let us go home," she said softly, shifting the car into gear. As they drove off down the sunlit road, Jenna felt a profound sense of hope wrapping around her, a shield against the shadows that had tried to ensnare them. This was a new beginning. And so, dear viewers, as Jenna and Ryan drive into the light, remember this: darkness doesn't define you. It is how you rise from it. But before you go, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us unite in this amazing community. You are the heart of our channel.